Those that don't walk by faith, they have survival mechanisms. For example, some children were told by their parents that if they don't get a good feeling from someone, they just have to remove away. Now, that's a smart thing to teach your children, especially when they're little. When they're older, they need to be able to discern stuff a bit deeper. But at least if you don't have Christ and you don't have a paranormal cover either, that is a good thing to do. By the way, I'm not sporting, not even the idea of having a paranormal cover, because with the paranormal, there are always side effects besides retaliation of the world. So I'm just saying that at least those with a paranormal cover have some type of security working for them. And even those with a paranormal cover need to be cautious. Look, if you don't have the resurrection power of Christ working through you, then the only thing you have is relief through the paranormal, or you have coping mechanisms to deal with danger. And those coping mechanisms, I call them survival mechanisms. Now, there are various survival mechanisms people hold on to. Some people remain quiet almost all of the time. Why? Because if they don't talk, then people can't tell them to shut up and they don't feel rejected. If they don't talk, they can't say something someone doesn't like and they can't be attacked. It's a trauma response to them being attacked in the past because someone heard something they said that the other didn't like and the other escalated. And now they don't want that to happen again. Or maybe it was even one of their parents who did this to them. In any case, survival mechanisms are common out there. So when you meet people, realize that unless they are renewed in their mind, walking in the resurrection power, they either have survival mechanisms or they have paranormal relief operating for them. Those with paranormal relief will be more relaxed to deal with. Those with survival mechanisms are operating in a toxicity that they can't see. Now, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. There are times you enter a situation in which you can clearly see something that shouldn't be there or something that's missing. You notice a red flag that's so obvious that you faint when you realize that nobody else seems to notice that red flag. Now let me tell you, that is the survival mechanism of the public. They don't mention the issue so they don't have to deal with it. For example, if you have, I'm just using a common example now. Let's say you have a village, and in that village there's this one girl or just one young woman who is quite lewd. Compare her to the other women in the village, she's hypersexual. Now, this is the first thing you notice about her. She stands out from all the other women in the village. Or let's say it's not a village, but it's a small town. A small town would be a better, more appropriate example. In a small town, amongst all the young women, she is the one everyone notices because she is sexualized all the time. And the thing is, it is as if nobody notices it. And you think, huh? What is this? You see this woman with various guys here and there, often guys that are not even from the city, and nobody addresses her behavior. And then one day, you talk about it with one of your buddies who lives there, and the buddy tells you, don't mention that around here. And you ask him, why can't I mention it? It's in people's face. Exactly, that's why you shouldn't mention it. And then your buddy explains to you, listen, that girl, when she was younger, her father was an alcoholic that used to beat the mother and the siblings. She was even taken advantage of by another relative. And here's the big part. The people here allowed it to happen. There were warning signals that things were going wrong in the family, but people allowed it to happen. It's only when things really got out of hand and it became an embarrassment to the town that the police got involved. So this woman has become as effective as she is because of neglect of this community. So if they would address her odd and defective behavior, then she could blame them for it. And even though it's a narcissistic thing to just blame someone else for the issues you have, she would be correct. She would be correct in blaming them because they're the ones that cause those issues. So if they are bothered by her issues, then they need to work on a solution with her. But here's the thing. If the public pretends as if they're victimized by her defective behavior, then they are open hypocrites because there's enough evidence that they were the ones that allowed bad things to continue to happen to her, even though there were warning signals that were going on. So, because nobody wants to take responsibility, because nobody wants to look bad, people decide that, you know what, we're not going to mention this. It happens, we deal with it, but don't talk about it. Because listen, man, the moment you mention this, everyone becomes upset with you. Because nobody wants to deal with the blame of the community, because the community is to blame. Nobody wants to face this about their parents, about their siblings, about their partners, that they were cowards that allowed bad things to happen to a little girl. So now that the little girl is a grown woman that's effective, they put up with their defective behavior because they know if they address the defective behavior, they need to address themselves. And then they need to explain why they allowed a grown man to violate his own family while remaining friends with that grown man. And once they admit this, they will lose all the credibility. And by losing credibility, social trust will go down and more bad stuff will happen in this community. So don't mention it. Now, this is just one example. Maybe there's another example. Let's say you enter the House of Parliament of a state or a province, but you notice that 99% of the people over there are not people of color, even though there's a high percentage of that population who belongs to the people of color. And then you notice that when you do a background check on the background of all those members of parliament, you realize that they all went to 2 universities. So you figure out very quickly that it's like a cult that sits there in the parliament. Now, most people will tell you don't mention this, because once you mention that the electorate system of that state or province is rigged, then you also have to ask yourself, why aren't the people aware of this? Or why is it so in their face but don't do anything about it? And then the cowardice and neglect of the community will be visible. So once you mention this, you will have people getting upset with you, seeking to harm you because they feel violated by you disturbing their ease. There's one thing I want you to understand here, saints. In the world, you have this covert expectation. I call it covert, or we said a hidden expectation, because it's an expectation that people will not tell you. Worldlings in general have the following expectation: live life, don't bother with things that don't add up, just live and let live. That is the attitude. So when things don't add up, you can mention it in debates, you can murmur and complain about it with each other, but don't actually do something about it. Just continue living as if you didn't see anything. Continue living as if you haven't heard anything, and don't speak about the things that don't add up. Mind your own business. This mind your own business attitude is really a form of cowardice because the public doesn't want to face things. If you adhere to this hidden expectation, people will be okay with you because you're not a threat to the ease that they rely on. But the moment you notice a red flag and you mention it, that's already trouble. Even if you're a child, children who often ask questions, proper questions, are called rude, or they're told they have a big mouth and they need to learn respect. And people get away with it because they're their children. If a grown man or a grown woman asks constructive things, you can't get away by saying you have a big mouth or whatever. Now you need to give an explanation. What happens often when you have a grown individual that ask proper questions, people either ignore the individual or they try to destroy the credibility, or sometimes people will go right into physical violence against them. Listen, in this world, when you notice obvious red flags that everyone should notice but people decide to ignore, when you mention the elephants in the room, you will be targeted. You will be afflicted. Your life will be made difficult. Your life will be endangered. So think about it. You have people who noticed something was wrong and they opened their mouth. And they were punished. And later when the crime came too obvious, then people did something about it, but now they're going to give credit to some other hero. Think about the Second World War. There were people aware that something was amiss. And the people that mentioned that something was amiss, often they were shut down by the public. The public didn't want to hear it. It was only when it became too obvious that something is terribly amiss that the public had to recognize what's going on, but then there was a full war already. And after the Second World War, they gave credit to the United States for liberating Europe, even though that's not even 100% correct. You had the Moroccans who played a role, you had South Indians, people from South Asia, that played a role. A lot of Muslims played a role in it, so it's not just the United States that liberated Europe, but they credit the United States. Why is that? Because if they have to actually look at the history, they would have to explain that there were a lot of people in Germany, in the Netherlands, in various places that were occupied by the Nazis that expressed their concerns. Sometimes even Nazi people expressed concerns that something was off. And then they also need to explain that the public shut them up because the public didn't want to hear it. The same it is today. When you see something in a situation that shouldn't be there, or you see something, or you notice that something is amiss that should be there, the best thing to do is to just register the oddity, do your research about it, and then make sure you avoid situations where this red flag is present. But Rashid, shouldn't we open our mouth to rescue people's lives? Listen, we should rescue people where necessary. But here's the thing, the public should want to be rescued. If something is greatly amiss, if something totally does not match a situation, and if it's so into people's face, and nobody mentions it, it is because they're in on it, as simple as that. And if they're in on it, it's because they don't want to deal with the fact that something is amiss. So if it's into their face, and all the adults around avoid the topic, and children even dare to speak about it, why do you think you can get away by speaking about it? You're not getting away with it. It's not written in the law that you can't address it, but the moment you address it, there are going to be informal consequences against you. And some of those informal consequences will imply that some people even set you up to go to jail for crimes you didn't do, just so that nobody will pay attention to things you've pointed out. Look, we tend to glorify truth seekers and truth speakers. But don't we realize that truth seekers and truth speakers are people that are targeted? People that have a difficult life because people make things hard on them. Often they can't get jobs. Often they can't easily find a mate to live with because the relatives of their potential sex partners tell them, no, we don't want you to be part of our family. Those realize that some of those people, even the children, abandon them because the children want to be accepted by society. And when society is against the parents, they tend to abandon the parents just because they don't want to lose society's acceptance and all the benefits that come along with it, well, so-called benefits. Don't realize that truth seekers are often people that are marginalized, denied, sometimes openly violated, That is the one thing about society, or as the Bible calls it, the world, that people don't want to admit. The moment you notice the societal narcissism and you address it, from that point on, you're marked for death. You're marked for death. People don't want you alive anymore. They want you gone for good. But they won't tell you that into your face. That will be too obvious. But they will make things hard on you in the hope that you will get accidents, in the hope you will commit suicide, or in the hope that something bad will happen to you so that you will be gone. That's how it is with the world, or as you can say, secular term society. The moment you don't give in to the relief seeking of the masses, you are in trouble. So everyone in the world or in society lives under a threat. Everyone in society lives under a threat against their safety and against their well-being. The only option they have is to deal with this threat in such a way that they're not harmed. Now, most people deal with this threat by just conforming and becoming part of the threat. They become part of the violence so that the violence doesn't harm them. That's what most people do. Some people take a paranormal charm so that they have more flexibility. And then you have people who walk by faith and totally shake off the yoke of the world. Because every unbeliever who says no to living under this threat, man, often they just disappear, they go missing, or they suddenly end up in prison for some weird crime. And when you look at the case doesn't add up. Or they lose their minds, end up in a mental asylum because they've been so afflicted by the public. That's how it goes. So, in society, also called the world in the Bible, you have no option. You have no option and you have no choice. Either you get along with all the toxic restrictions or you have to die. You're not allowed to talk back. You're not allowed to ask questions. You're not allowed to even speak. There are expectations, and your purpose of existence is just validate those expectations. That's how society operates. That's the only way society can operate. You're only allowed to debate things they allow you to debate on. All the other things are censored. So, as saints, it's the best for us to avoid compromising situations. A compromised situation is any situation in which you are likely to endanger your own safety and long-term well-being. Now, with compromising, I don't mean going against the values we cherish as believers. I'm talking about when you are around people who insist on denying the obvious just because they don't want to admit the violence that's threatening them. When you're around such people, you are in a compromised situation. Sooner or later, that violence that the people are denying is going to haunt you too. That's why we're not supposed to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Because unbelievers, they hold on to a yoke of fear in which they excuse the most inexcusable acts of violence just to be accepted. We should not partake in that, but we shouldn't go out there like rabid dogs attacking any type of error either. We shouldn't be warriors that attack all the errors around us. No, we should be practical and wise in how we deal with stuff. And that's why I'm teaching you, avoid compromising situations as much as possible. Sometimes you just find yourself in a situation because it just happens out of the blue. Such things happen. But as far as it depends on you, stay away and stay out of compromised situations as much as possible. And even in the world, you have unbelievers who understand this. There are unbelievers who are like this. Anytime they notice that there is contention, they just leave. If they're at a place and people are looking angry at someone, the people are not looking angry at them. But if they, for example, enter a bar, or they enter a cafe, or they enter a cinema, whatever, if they enter a room with people in it, and all those people look a bit angry, they tend to leave. or when they see everyone looking angry at someone or talking at someone's back, they tend to leave. There are unbelievers out there who just leave any time they sense there's contention. And you know what? They're smart. Because let's say you visit a cinema and later a fight broke out over there in the cinema. You were not involved in the fight, you were just there to enjoy watching a movie, but a fight broke out. And let's say now that the police had to come and all of that, a very big scene. Let's say now that you were seen at the cinema. If later a homicide happens as a result of the conflicts were there, who do you think the police are going to call? All the potential witnesses, you being one of them. And because you are a potential witness, the risk is there that you may become a potential suspect. Now you may think, Rashid, how can you become a potential suspect? You're just there to watch a movie. Listen, when society is not functioning properly because the people are anxious, the institutions need to put the blame on someone so that ease would return. Because if something tragic happened in a society and there's nobody to blame, nobody to release the tension upon, things will get worse. So the pressure on the police is there to frame someone for the crime. And because you were there at the cinema when things went wrong, you are not only a potential witness, but you may end up as a potential suspect. So if you would have avoided the whole situation, you wouldn't even be on the map. For example, if someone has a lot of people talking behind his back and you're around this individual, the people talk behind the back of that individual, sooner or later they will begin to talk behind your back also. Because they're targeting the individual because they have issues they want to escalate on that individual. So think about it. When they can't find that individual to escalate on, they will remember, that Kevin keeps hanging around that guy, or Susie or Rafaela or Angelique keeps hanging around that lady. They're going to think about you. And if they one day have enough and they really want to unload their violence and they can't find the target, they're going to look for you because you are associated with the target. With their target, I mean. So there are unbelievers out there who are quite practical. Anytime they sense any type of contention, they leave. And here's the thing, they have no protection at all. And they realize very well that they have no protection to protect them. That's why the only thing they can do is just to avoid bad situations. Some people are very arrogant and proud. They think they can handle stuff. They think, I know karate, or I know jiu-jitsu, or I know kung fu, or whatever. And they think, you know what, I don't need to avoid certain places in town. Because if people come and look for a fight, I just knock them out. And here's the thing, some of them end up dying. Because during the so-called fight, when they were defending themselves, someone picked up a knife and stabbed them randomly and ran away. And now they're dead. Or someone pulled up a gun. Or some people carry a gun with them and think, hey, nobody's going to mess with me, I have a gun. And I'm experienced in shooting. Okay, you can be experienced with shooting, but you are a vulnerable creature. Your eyes don't see everything. Maybe people know you carry a gun. And that's why they don't come and pick a fight with you. But from a distance, they may use a gun against you when you're walking. Maybe every Sunday you go to church. So they're waiting you when you leave church and then they shoot you. Yes, you have a gun with you, but what did the gun help you with when you were shot suddenly? Or maybe they're not even going to shoot you. Maybe they're going to frame you for a crime. Maybe you'll have someone lying on you that you raped them, did something to them, just to smear your reputation. What is your gun going to help you if someone is smearing your reputation? If your reputation is smeared, you may lose your job, you may lose your income, you may lose everything you've worked for. So what is your gun or your self-defense course going to help you with that? Some people endanger themselves because they rely on their own strength. And by relying on their own strength, they overestimate their own abilities. Now, the more realistic unbelievers realize, okay, I have no protection, and things go down, so I just need to get out of the situation before it goes down. Now, we as saints, we have power, okay? But it's better to avoid compromised situations than to have to shut them down. Because once you shut down a compromised situation, that attention will go to you because you shut down the situation. But then people are going to be obsessed with you because they will realize you have power. And once the public realizes you have power, now they're going to target you. Think about when Christ delivered the man that had the legion of demons. That man was a scapegoat of the community, and all the demons of the people were pushed on that man. When Christ delivered that man, his power was displayed. And the public there, when they came to see the proof, they saw the same man that was possessed with a legion in his right mind. And this frightened the people. And they asked Christ to leave. They begged him to leave them alone. Why? Because Christ now had power to deal with them. And they were terrified of Christ dealing with them. So instead of facing the obvious that their violence as a community was dealt with, they didn't even want to admit their own violence. They just projected all the blame on Christ. And Christ knew that if Christ wouldn't leave, they would escalate and turn on each other. And if that would have happened, the authorities would blame Christ for angering the people, and that would have been an unnecessary smear on Christ's reputation. So Christ, to de-escalate the situation, he just left them when they begged him to leave. And that's something we need to learn also. We have nothing to prove against people who don't want solutions. If they don't want solutions, if they don't want to participate with justice, then they are the losers and they're the pathetic ones. Because they're the ones that keep danger alive. So if they persist in danger, if they persist in filth, then we shake their filth off of us so that they can't use their filth against us. That's what we do. Learn to avoid compromised situations at all costs. Be at peace.